There is a secret. There is a secret that North Carolina and South Carolina together has been hiding for a while. Luke chapter 8, verse 17. For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad. My name is Officer Abraham, and I have one hell of a thing to show you. So, what it is that we've embarked on, myself, Officer Aton down in South Carolina, we spoke for a little while, I want to say at least a couple months ago, and we decided, let's create something, let's create some good visuals for the history of North Carolina. Now, this was one of the first 13 colonies. And we already know that there was a lot of slave ports, a lot of history that's tied and intertwined with this colony here and how it really created a foundation for America. Thing is, nobody really decided to dig into the roots of how the foundation here spread throughout the whole Western Hemisphere. We decided to do a documentary out here, right? And one of the first places that I decided, I was like, hey brothers, let's go to this slave monument, this Freedom Park. And upon me first looking at it, when I saw it a while ago, a lot of the quotes made sense to me to a degree, because I didn't really meditate on it yet. And then now I'm meditating on it, like I mentioned earlier. I didn't agree with it. But this one somewhat makes sense. It says, and this is all uncovering the history within Raleigh. So we're going to start here, and then we're going to branch out. You're going to see how it all links together. It says, it has taken me almost a lifetime to discover that true emancipation or freedom lies in the acceptance of the whole past. So when we accept the past, that's Romans 15:4. You have to know your past in order to properly walk today and know your future. I'm not quoting Romans 15:4, but that's the scriptural reference about acceptance of the past and knowing the past to teach you now. Job 8:8 says the same. It says also, acceptance of the whole past in deriving my strength from all my roots and facing up to the degradation as well as the dignity of my ancestors. So what Paul Murray is saying here actually is making mention of how true freedom is how not only is there a true acceptance of the past, admitting to what had happened, but then what we was taken from and what was taken from us is restored back to us. That never happened. You know what they did instead? Turn around, show them what they did. They gave us a freedom park. They said, here, have a park. You don't get freedom. You don't get real emancipation. This is what they did. This is Raleigh, North Carolina. And as the Carolinas as a whole, one of the 13 colonies, they had a big part to play inside of us being sold into slavery and on ships. And we're gonna mention 3 of those devils in a moment. So one of the first parts, and one of the first places that we decided to go to in Raleigh. So this is destination numero uno, number 1. One of the first places we decided to go was Freedom Park, right? Now, they have this tall, golden-ish monolith and a lot of quotes that surrounded around the entire park, whether it's on the red tile or it's not tile, it's somewhat of a, I don't know what it's made out of. But then they also have some quotes that's up when you go up the stairs on some rusted iron. And they have written or engraved a lot of the quotes inside of that. And while me and my camera guy, Officer Sirac, he did a good job. When we was out there, we saw some of the quotes that we disagreed with. One of them is like this by Harriet Jacobs. She was an author and refuge from slavery. And I have to admit, based off of this quote, let me read it. I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. They told me my newborn babe was a girl. That's what he said, excuse me. My heart was heavier than it had ever been before. Slavery is terrible for men, but it is far more terrible for women, right? Slavery is horrible for women, truth. It is horrible for men, truth. But I have to disagree when you're saying it's more terrible for women. Let's bring it to today. Right now, we are yet this day in our captivity. Baruch 3:8. Today, it's not the brothers that are getting the assistance in every shape, form, or fashion. They're not the ones being placed inside of the colleges to get the degrees to overshadow the man to say that now the women have the pants in relationship. The brothers get the short end of the stick. Even back when you go way back in Egypt, chapter 1, they had to deal wisely with us and make sure that they kill off the male babies and then kept the female as well. That same thought process happened today. It happened during the time of Christ, and it's happening today as well. They want to get rid of the men. The focus is to get off the 144,000, to kill off the 144,000. It's bad for the women, but I disagree with that it being harder for the women than it is for men. Then when we had looked at some of the other ones, there's some that we did agree with, such as they had one that mentioned about the torch that the fathers had gave to us. We're never going to let that fire burn out. I thought that was amazing. I thought that was fire. Another one by Little More Merrick, 1890 to 1987. And I think this is a great quote and always something to remember. My father passed the torch to me, which I have never let go out. That torch is our spirit. We can never let the spirit that we have to fight to make sure that we get our proper freedom. We should never let that thing go out. And one of the other quotes we read over there was the same way. But they had some other ones that were more so on the back end of Freedom Park that had a little bit more of a punch to it, a little bit more of that action, a little bit more of that flame, a little bit more of that unquenchable fire that you read about that's going to wake up the prophets in the last days in Ezekiel chapter 37. They had a little bit more of that. One of them, I had read it, if you would allow me, I had read it, and it actually said this, right? Anything is possible. And just think about how the forced migration, right, brought us here and all the struggles we faced and continue to face. Look at what we have been able to achieve as a people. So it's mentioning about forced migration. And of course, I know that they use those words like it's colloquial, but slavery. We was brought over this way, forced to come this way. But even still, I mentioned when we was out there that one of the biggest things that we was able to accomplish was the fact that we're still alive. After we got done with Freedom Park, they had three guys in particular. Edomites is what the Bible would call them. There was James K. Polk, Andrew Johnson, and Andrew Jackson. Not so much in time order, but those are the three guys, right? Each one of them are from Carolina. I know one of them was from Mecklenburg County, and we have it on the video. One of them is from Mecklenburg County, the other one from Union County, and another one from Wake County. Wake County, I know for a fact, was Andrew Johnson. I'm gonna get to him in a second. Now, here's the thing. Andrew Jackson, a lot of us know him from the problems that he had caused the indigenous, which we call Gad and Reuben. We know for him for what he did to them and sending them on a trail of tears, pushing them out Midwest, West, and scattering them to all different kinds of reservations throughout the United States, right? But as far as it goes for North Carolina, again, the whole point of this documentary is to kind of pull up the roots about what really these states, North and South Carolina, is about. But let's focus on North for a second. In the triangle, the college triangle like it's called now, the triangle was full of these specific tribes. I had to get it because I knew I would have forgotten it. I had to write it down. One of the tribes, right? All of you that are from these tribes, you will resonate with this. The Koheri tribe, the Halawa-Saponi tribe, the Okanichi tribe, the Saponi, along with the Lumbee, Maharan, and the Wakama-Sawan. I hope I said that last one right. They were the eastern band of the Cherokee. Eastern band meaning toward the eastern side of the United States. They all was forced to move from the triangle once they had this guy by the name of Mordecai, the Mordecai Plantation. We're gonna wind up showing you some footage on that as well. He had owned at least 1,000 acres of land, 500 to 1,000 acres of land here in Wake County. And it was one of the biggest ones in Wake County, not the biggest in the state, one of the biggest in Wake County. his land has a big portion to do with downtown, a big portion to do with the foundation of the city of Raleigh. It was only coined after the explorer, Sir Walter Raleigh, after he got blessed by the Queen. So these guys, these devils, did a lot of things. They did some bad stuff. For example, I got another one. We went to the state capitol inside of the actual building. Now, this part of the documentary actually was a surprise. I didn't plan on going there. I usually like to research all of what I'm doing, right? So we went in there and it was a surprise. Yeah, none of that stuff was researched, so everything was a cappella when I went in there. Looks like we're here. So one of the spots at least. So I never knew. This is absolutely a cappella. I did not know this was open and you can come in here. So what y'all get from right here and inside was not planned. So how's it going?
How you doing?
Are we allowed to have cameras in here?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay. Everything out?
Yes. Cell phones, car keys, anything better.
Oh, and look at the date too. Let's see. 1776. Okay, all right. All right, so like I mentioned, a lot of this is a cappella. We ain't plan on it. They gave us a brochure of the state capitol. And they have frequently asked questions. So I might dissect this a bit more on the back end. Let's look around. Let's have some fun with this. So this is the amendments, right? And it's making mention of them. But I saw this part. It mentioned about how the Constitution, living documents, so on and so forth, 13th, 14th, all the way to 19th, 13th, 14th, 15th, and 19th, excuse me. But it mentioned about how the enslaved people and women, they neglect to secure full citizenship for some members of the population. So the citizenship of enslaved was like this, so 3/5 of a man. But it says notably, check this out. Now that was Judah, but notably Native Indians are Gad, right? Reuben as well, said were neglected by these amendments. Close shot. Native Indians were neglected in the amendments in the Constitution. They did not have y'all as a part of it. See, look, it says right here, boom. Neglected these amendments and assured the citizenship to the right to vote. You see that? I wanted to show you that. I'm gonna say something. It says slavery at the Capitol. So just keep your focus right on this. That's why we're doing this. And I'm gonna show you how much Raleigh has a part to play inside of everything we're gonna mention in North Carolina. Raleigh plays a part. It was a fortress. It was a fortress. Raleigh was meant to be a fortress. For when the American Revolution had happened, that was one of the generals that's within this state capital. And as well, it was meant to be a fortress against a strategic military operation they had set here in Raleigh. They made sure they played that strategically. I want to show y'all something. So we had got the inner workings right here of the state capitol, right? But there was this quote, this thing I saw on a poster that they had on the outside of this door. I want to show y'all just real quick. See it. I want you to notice how it mentioned in regards to Reconstruction, right? But around this time when they had the Reconstruction, in Psalms 83 it says they had conspired together with one consent that they may cut off the name of the people of Israel forever, right? Psalms 83. I want you to see right around, where is it? I want to see with Abraham Lincoln right here. Look, check this out. It says after the Civil War, 1861 to 65, mentioned about the United States government had to decide how to best unify the nation and integrate the formerly enslaved population, right? The key part that you want is when it says, during the war, Abraham Lincoln and the Congress had to discuss this question. And they had a whole documentary that was based around this in regards to the 13th Amendment and whatnot too. So they were trying to discuss how they should best use the amendments as it came about. Here's the thing, Abraham Lincoln had to discuss how to best use the slaves that weren't initially a part of it. And this is what it says. And Congress had discussed this question, struggling over a variety of approaches. The consensus on Reconstruction in regards to North Carolina and the United States, as it was known, would not be easily achieved. It became more difficult after Lincoln's assassination when Vice President Andrew Johnson, we talked about him before, became president. So this is Johnson's approach to it, right? Watch this. It mentioned how he was initially a Southern Democrat, but he was like, the Carolina and the United States, he said, was best suited to serve white people and felt that the voting rights of emancipated black men were a state issue. As Johnson planned his strategy for Reconstruction, many Northerners felt he was too lenient on the Confederate South. Because remember, during the time during the Civil Rights, there was a big war in the Civil Rights in the Civil War from the Union and then the South, right? At that time, it was always something that Abraham Lincoln's side was. He wanted the Union to be together, whether the slaves were free or whether they were still in bondage. He always wanted the Union to be as a whole. Thing is, when he had mentioned how after Abraham Lincoln died, and then Andrew Johnson, who was always a big supporter of slavery, when he came into power, he always was for the Confederate South. That's why he was always lenient towards it. That goes back into Psalms 83 when it says, come, let us cut them off from being a nation that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. That's what this council is right here. And it's right here in North Carolina inside the state capitol, where they also had discussions about this. So we have more about that. They had some councils that had, excuse the creaky floors, but they had some councils that they were doing here about how to destroy us. This looks exactly how it looks on the movies when you think about how the old courtrooms with a big seating and everybody came to hear what the judgment was. This looks exactly like it. I wouldn't be surprised if they reawoken some of this stuff to judge us in these last days. Same places where they had set the boundaries and set their democracy up in the beginning is exactly where they'll put the judgment on the prophets for the end. I imagine that would be so. Let's look at the library.
But we wind up seeing George Washington. Again, all of these guys had and owned slaves. This is what Raleigh, the Carolinas, was founded on, right? So just want to let y'all know that. Go upstairs and then we look at one of the posters. One of the posters had mentioned how Abraham Lincoln, when he started to do the Emancipation Proclamation, he wanted the Union to be together, right? But then the big discussion that he had when he was inside of the courtrooms, whether it was here or other places, one of the big things that he had in the discussion that he had before the Emancipation Proclamation can be done and finished was how can we get the black men to be a part of the system so that way the fighting can stop. This was inside the state capitol and we have footage on that, right? The problem that caused the issue with that council was he got assassinated. So he had Andrew Johnson, the vice president at the time, come into his step. Here's where the problem comes in though. It's even mentioned while inside the state capitol that the Constitution was never made for black men or black people to be a part of those amendments, to be a part of the Constitution. It says it right inside the state capitol. So the council that they had was, how can we get them integrated into a society that the Confederates never intended to have black men a part of? So all of that goes into, you guessed it, Psalms 83. Come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the remembrance of Israel may be no more in remembrance. That council, you can put names to it, such as Abraham Lincoln, such as Andrew Johnson, such as some of these other guys that actually did it. And then next, you have the infamous James K. Polk. And I'm about to mention him in a second. James K. Polk, right? It says that his connection to Raleigh was primarily through his affiliation with UNC, right? But here's the thing. His presidency supposedly came into fulfilling manifest destiny era. And you'll see where his presidency had annexed Texas, California, and it even fueled the Mexican-American War. So our brothers that tend to think that they're separate, Hispanics, Gad, which would be Native American Indian, the Kohori, Okanichi tribes, like we just mentioned earlier, Reuben, which would be the Seminole Indians, right? Because they was right along the Trail of Tears, met up around Missouri and then kept on going further westward. Some of those tribes came from North Carolina and went over there, but Seminole, they came from Florida. That's besides the point. James K. Polk has started a lot of the, and it mentions it on a statue. He did a lot of the national border, expanding the national border of the United States of America. But again, these guys not only come from North Carolina, but they made sure they gave a lot of honor to their alma mater. And James K. Polk, his was the famous UNC, which a lot of people praise for their sports, basketball, not so much football, but a lot of their educational systems as well. Chapel Hill is used for its research and its, I want to say it was science division, I believe it was. And they have things that's mentioned on these campuses with their names involved. Problem is, they have names of these guys, and these men are placed inside of towns like Raleigh, and I didn't get to some of these other guys yet, but Charlotte, there's some of these guys that's mentioned over there. These men that would be called founding fathers per se. They're placed here, but their start came off of the backs of us, the backs of our Hispanic brothers, the backs of our Native Indian brothers. It came off of our blood, sweat, and tears, and then they put it in your face, give you false and terrible, by the way, just to be honest, terrible Freedom Park ideas with quotes that's very misleading and different doctrines behind it. And then they put it in your face saying, maybe this is our apology. Well, it's not, and we don't accept it. So that's why we're coming out with this. And that last quote that I mentioned I was gonna tell y'all, right? I need to read that. And this is what it says here. We want our children and grandchildren to march on towards full lives and noble characters. And for that, we got to be free. Freedom of soul and freedom of mind. Freedom, freedom. The only way we get that is once we break those chains that were put around our mind after the Emancipation Proclamation. And you can only do that with the Bible. A lot of y'all might know about Andrew Jackson, what he did with the Indians and how he had put them and sent them all to the Bible Belt, the Trail of Tears. You might know about that. But what you don't know is about Andrew Johnson and why I'm even making mention of these three guys and how they play a part inside of the Carolinas as the 12th colony. Primarily, they were born here. They're from here, and they give a lot of honor to George Washington, who also happened to have a family tree that is listed here in North Carolina at one of the bigger slave plantations in the midst of Raleigh called the Mordecai House.